Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and we just had today the Diablo 4 mid-season patch dev campfire chat. And I'll start by giving you the super brief summary version of the chat. Meta is not changing. There's going to be another campfire chat next week that's going to be a lot beefier, a lot longer, have a lot more details. It's going to be about Season 7, patch 2.1 specifically, where all the big changes are going to be happening. But for the mid-season patch, which is landing next week, they are not nerfing the Spiritborn. They are buffing all the other classes, but they are not buffing all other classes to where Spiritborn is now, so ultimately, meta isn't really going to change. So that's the super quick version. Lots more details coming next week, but now we'll go through the changes that are happening, the design philosophies that they have explained, why they are doing things the way they are doing, what changes are happening, and why they're not really going to shake up the meta. So first off, they did acknowledge that the Spiritborn is too strong. And they said this is largely due to unintended interactions, as well as some balance issues. They said other classes, however, are performing well with regards to balance amongst themselves. So while the other classes, again, Rogue, Necromancer, Barbarian, Druid, and Sorcerer, their relative power levels amongst those 5 classes are in a good spot. It's just the Spiritborn is way too high. And it seems outside of Spiritborn overperforming, they seem pretty content with the current state of things. Material bottlenecks, material drop rates, that at launch of season wasn't in an ideal spot, but after some patches, things now seem to be largely under control. They like that there's a lot of different builds that are Torment 1 viable. They seem to be having Torment 1 be that point of, that's where they want all builds to be viable. Again, Torment 4 is just, you're more efficient, but you can get everything in Torment 1. Overall, they seem happy with the structure that the game is in currently, and they want to work on refining and tuning what they have now, as opposed to doing massive reworks like we've seen over the last couple of seasons. And they also concede that ancestral drops seem to be a little bit on the low side, and they'll have more details to share there. Now, when it comes to balance, they have 2 general design philosophies. The first is that they want players to feel like they can be strong and powerful and break the game, so the whole power fantasy side of things. And the second philosophy is that they want parity in power amongst the classes. They don't want one class significantly stronger or one class significantly weaker. And they admit that when the game launched, they leaned too heavily on the parity part, and not enough on the power fantasy part, which is why they were basically playing whack-a-mole. When a build would rocket up, they would just knock it back down, and everyone hated that, so they changed that approach, and starting in Season 2, they would just sort of let, if a crazy powerful build was found, like Ball Lightning in Season 2, they would just let it run and adjust next season. And overall, players seem to prefer that significantly, which has led them to make the decision to not adjust the Spiritborn this season. They concede that people have spent, dozens of hours building their characters, and now if in a patch they suddenly pull the rug out from under people in the middle of a season, it's not a great experience. So again, unless there is some negative impact on performance, as in computer performance, right? Server lag, or there's so much crap on screen that it's like dropping everyone's FPS. Those are situations where they will intercede, and that's why they nerfed the Evade Spiritborn build, because it was causing server lag or performance issues. So in cases like that, yes, they will step in and nerf, but outside of that, they'll let the build run out its course throughout the rest of the season. But for Season 7, expect the Spiritborn to be brought down in power significantly. They're going to fix all those unintended interactions, and they're also planning to just overall nerf the Spiritborn a little bit. It doesn't sound like they're going to kill the Spiritborn, but basically the buffs that other classes are getting now in the mid-season patch are to help bring those classes in line with the power level that they intend the Spiritborn to be in Season 7. And they did address the popular comment of, why, just buff all the other classes up to the Spiritborn. And they explained that if they just keep doing that, right? If they just always, anytime there's a runaway build, they buff everything else up to that build, and then the next season another runaway build, and they buff everything up, then they'll just have to keep adding more torment levels. And this is Rhykker speaking, like, what's the point at that point? You're just on a treadmill where everything is just always going up. Your numbers are going up, and the monster numbers are going up, and anything has any meaning. This is how you get runaway power creep. This is what happened in Diablo 3. This is how we had over 20 different difficulty settings, and we end up with items that have literally 40,000% damage multipliers. Then they gave us a preview of the class updates that are coming. It is not at all exhaustive. Patch notes will come later in the week. Normally they come right after the stream, but I guess they weren't finalized yet. Barbarian is seeing some baseline core skill buffs. I think we're seeing about a 20% damage increase across the board there. Buffs to underperforming legendaries and uniques. The Druid is going to get buffs to all key passives. I think about 40% buffs roughly, as well as legendary and unique buffs. Necromancer's getting buffs to all their basic skills, almost doubling of their damage, I think. They're getting passive buffs, more damage there, buffs to their uniques. For the Rogue, they're buffing core skills, they're buffing key passives. For the Sorceress, the Fire Sorcerer is being buffed, the Cold Sorcerer is being buffed. They're going to let the new legendary aspects scale based on charge bolts and incinerate damage. And then even the Spiritborn is getting some buffs, but it's small buffs to skills that just aren't being used by people. So Razor Wings, Withering Fist, Toxic Skin, they're relatively small buffs, and again, this isn't going to overall increase the power level of the Spiritborn. These are just skills that no one is using. Again, the main intent behind the mid-season patch is to serve as a stepping stone to the next balance patch in Season 7, getting all classes and builds closer in parity to each other. They're also going to buff some of the underutilized runes. Nothing too major there, but again, it's a stepping stone. Bigger changes to runes and rune words will happen in Season 7. They're making changes to shrines. They admitted that conduit shrines feel terrible and are the real cursed shrines of Diablo 4. So now artillery, blast wave, and conduit shrines are going to scale with player level and paragon level. Overall, they're just going to deal a lot more damage. And they said that this is just a first step. They're going to see how players respond to it, and they'll make further adjustments if needed. My guess is this is not going to be enough. Honestly, blast wave and artillery shrines, they don't hurt you, right? So they're always a bonus. They might be an inconsequential bonus, but they're not an active detriment. So nice that they're getting a buff. Conduits, though, because they alter how your kit plays, I still think they're going to end up feeling bad, but fingers crossed, we'll see. Then outside of the mid-season patch, for the rest of this season, we can expect the return of the Red Cloak Horror. They didn't say quite the entire midwinter event. I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but at the very least, Red Cloak Horror, the Krampus monster from the holiday event last year, is coming back. They'll have a blog detailing basically all the stuff that's going to still be coming up in the season. So there's that. There's going to be the Mother's Blessing XP event. They're also going to have some kind of welcome back event for Eternal players because the expansion broke all old builds, basically. It sounds like it's going to be something where you can get like an instant boost. You create a new character and you'll get a boost to level 50 with a pre-made build and pre-made gear. Since right now, if you log into Eternal, all of your old gear is marked as legacy. You can't craft on it. So it can be a little hard to change out of a build that you're in to adjust to the new meta. Oh, also, you're going to get all of your Altars of Lilith unlocked through this boost event, in case you haven't done that yet. They're also planning to have another free trial coming up, which will have the Spiritborn as something that you can try out in case you haven't bought Vessel of Hatred yet. Then next week, they didn't give a date yet, but next week we're going to get another beefier live stream talking about the PTR of the test server for Season 7 Patch 2.1. Probably not the Season 7 theme, but the Patch 2.1 that comes with the season. They said there's going to be a lot to talk about there, and it's happening sooner than they normally would, just because American Thanksgiving is approaching. That's going to be end of November. So people are going to be out of the office then, so they want to get it done before their holidays begin. We also did not get an exact date for the mid-season patch. I'm guessing it's going to be on Tuesday, however. Then during the Q&A, they touched upon a few other points that have been brought up in the community. First off, ancestral items and the codex upgrading. Currently, things are operating as intended. They do want maxing out your codex to be a very long tail progression thing, but they do agree that things might be not tuned as well as they could be, so they alluded that they might make it easier, they might make some changes to ancestral drop rates or something, and we'll learn more about that next week. They were asked about the grind to Paragon 300. Sounds like they currently have no plans to change that. Just in general, between the XP and the ancestral grind, they want it to be pretty easy to get to a point where your build is online, and they feel by Paragon 200, you're there. And the the next 100 Paragon levels is just kind of like incrementally more power. And from personal experience, like those last 50 Paragon levels are almost inconsequential. So they want you to be able to get your build together relatively quickly so that you can get to the playstyle that you want to be running, and then there still is a long tail chase to completion. And they don't want to make it too easy to reach level 300, because then we're back to where we were previously, where it's, you know, they made it very easy to get to level 100, and then there's basically nothing left to do, right? Killing monsters becomes pointless. Why kill monsters? You're not getting XP. Overall, I am on board with this philosophy. I do like this. I do like that they leave some room for aspirational goals of things that don't significantly increase your power, but it respects your time, right? It's like, well, you know, if I'm going to spend a day grinding, at least, you know, if I don't find any item upgrades, at least I got some XP out of it. You know, as opposed to in the past, right, you hit level 100 and then you can spend, you know, a day playing, you don't get any good drops, and, you know, you've just spent hours of your time with nothing to show for it. No XP, nothing. Now, something that I think they have not yet explained, and I hope that they do, is how XP works after a season ends. I hope and I expect that it works the way it worked in Diablo 3, which is that your seasonal XP gets added to your eternal XP. That doesn't mean that if you have 200 levels on eternal and 100 on seasonal, that you're going to have 300 Paragon levels at the end, right? It's not the level that gets added, but the total XP. So I think Paragon 270-ish or 280 is halfway to 300. So if you were, you know, 270 or 280 and 280, then those would add up together to Paragon 300. But basically the reason I'm explaining this is if there is a goal, and there is a goal, right? There is an objective, there is a reward at Paragon 300. You unlock a mount and a mount trophy. Even if for the average player it is impossible to reach Paragon 300 in one season, they're not going to put in the amount of hours needed to get there. It means over the course of a couple seasons, your Paragon XP is going to add up on your Eternal, and after a couple of seasons, then you're going to unlock the reward. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. They were asked if they have any plans to introduce mid-season mechanics. They said that for the time being, the plan really is mid-season to be mostly balance adjustments. Any kind of new mechanics would be reserved for a new season. They mentioned that they're continuously doing stability fixes. They've re-enabled DLSS now. They said anytime a player crashes, it actually sends them a bug report, so their engineers are always getting the reports and they're working at things. They were asked if the scrolls of restoration, the retempering scrolls, could be applied more than once to an item, if that change could be made. They said that they'll listen to feedback. So if you feel strongly about that, you know, keep making your voices heard. The devs will listen. Myself, personally, I don't think I've full bricked an item at all this season anymore, ever since the scrolls were added. And not just because of the scrolls, but also the changes to the temper recipes. As is custom, they were asked again about the armory, a wardrobe to save builds. They heavily alluded to having more to talk about this perhaps next week. They just kind of said stay tuned. They acknowledged that it's in the works, and they said stay tuned for news on that. So again, overall, not a whole lot is really changing with next week's patch. I think next week's campfire is going to be far more interesting. What I did enjoy about this campfire was hearing their philosophy. It's nice to hear, yes, this is operating as intended. No, this is not operating as intended. Yes, this is our intention. Yes, this is how we want to approach things going forward. Yes, this is why we are doing this or not doing this. I do have to admit the mid-season patch is extremely underwhelming to me. I think not shaking up the meta is going to mean that this season is pretty much over for a lot of people. Yes, we've had in the past runaway overpowered builds, but never something quite to the extent as the Spiritborn. The power differential is just so incredibly extreme. I mean, we're talking about a factor of literally 1,000,000 times more powerful. My idea would have been to have some kind of mid-season event, maybe, you know, during the Christmas event, right? The Midwinter Blight event. To have something, some kind of fancy magic upgrade that people can have as a temporary borrowed power that would elevate them to the level of a Spiritborn. Not as a class balance change, but just, I don't know, something. Maybe call it the blessing of the Spirit Realm. so that it, the Spiritborn already has it, so they can't benefit from this. But, the other classes get to take this buff, and now they're a million times stronger, so that we can actually be running other classes and not just Spiritborn. But again, under the understanding that this is temporary, it's just for the rest of the season, or even maybe just for a few weeks in the season, just to shake up that meta. Otherwise, I don't really understand the point of a mid-season balance patch. Sure, I understand that it's to prepare us more for the state of balance in Season 7, but it feels like just waiting for Season 7 and having all those balance changes at once would feel more impactful, right? People would see, oh, a bigger list of balance changes. Now you're kind of diluting the impact of the Season 7 patch. But those are my thoughts, folks. Sound off in the comments with your thoughts. And stay tuned. Again, later this week, we're going to get the full patch notes on what's changing in the mid-season patch. We're going to get more dates on when to expect all these other things coming up. I very much am looking forward to the patch 2.1 campfire next week. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my supporters. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.